the South African College representing the various SRCs in both our TVET colleges and universities. All the parties, I'm pleased to say, agreed to work together in solidarity and unity to tackle the pandemic of the coronavirus, COVID-19. Both the Department of Science and Innovation and the Department of Higher Education and Training have already started implementing measures to ensure that we respond effectively to this epidemic. In line with the President's announcements, we today were elaborating and agreeing on what we need to do as the sector. Just to remind ourselves, our post-schooling education and training system consists of about 2.5 million students. And the decisions, however, we're conscious that we're taking today will also somehow have implications for community education and training colleges, private higher education institutions, as well as private colleges, as well as other training colleges which are managed by our sister departments, like, for instance, nursing, agricultural, police, and traffic corps colleges. As reported yesterday, the Department of Higher Education and Training had already established a COVID-19 team comprising of Universities South Africa, representing the Vice-Chancellors, the South African College Principals Organization, the Department of Health, Higher Health, which is an initiative by our universities now extending into TVET colleges to deal with health matters and wellness matters affecting staff and students. All these had already come together to coordinate a sector response and collate institutional case management reports. The Department of Science and Innovation had already established a research team which is made up of the Medical Research Council, the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, and the HSRC to look at scientific research and interventions required to combat the pandemic. I must say also that the department is working with the National Institute for Communicable Diseases. These were the measures that we had already undertaken, or we have embarked upon prior to today's meeting. So at today's meeting then, we agreed on the following immediate measures with all the representatives, the key stakeholders in the sector. That all post-school institutions, education and training institutions, will be closed for early recess with effect from tomorrow, the 18th of March, and this includes the normal planned institutional breaks that we were going to be having. And these closures are mainly planned for the end of the week or the beginning of next week. And of course, some institutions have already made these decisions. Our plan, as things stand now, and what we agreed upon, is that these institutions, which mainly it's universities and the TVET colleges, are planning to return from this break on the 15th of April 2020. It's an extended break. This will be just after the Easter weekend. Of course, the exact modalities and even the dates for the reopening or the coming back from recess of our institutions will be based on the assessment of the cause of the virus. We also agreed that there will be institutional engagements and arrangements that will also include accommodation arrangements for students as well as leave arrangements for workers during this period. Of course, some of the institutional activities will continue during this period, such as postgraduate and research work. In other words, it's not a shutdown, it's an early recess for our institutions, which in the main means the suspension of academic activities and lectures, mainly for undergraduate and TVET colleges, of course, for diploma and certificate programs. However, we have agreed that the institutions will use this extended recess to identify and explore, amongst other things, digital and online methodologies for teaching and learning that may need to be put in place to support the academic program at a later stage. This may be particularly important for contact teaching in a range of programs at the majority of our colleges and universities. Of course, as I've said, the decisions by institutions will be based on scientific evidence as well as institutional considerations. As a sector, we will also use this break to continue to meet, to assess the situation regarding COVID-19 so that we can make decisions based on developments in relation to the virus itself. We have further agreed today that all our institutions will announce further measures that will be taken to minimize risks to all staff at all our institutions, including, of course, our own departments and entities. In these agreements, we will continue to be guided by the guidelines that we communicated yesterday, which includes the following: that all international travel should be cancelled or postponed by our institutions. That also includes our departments, including the minister and the deputy minister, so that there is fairness and equity. Any students or staff of public institutions who may have a critical reason to travel internationally should consult the relevant authorities at their institutions and are required to report their planned travel according to the institutional protocols in place. I must have said, by the way, my apologies, that one of the most important decisions we took today will be the establishment of an inclusive national task team that will guide the institutions and the sector on how to deal with the situation. Now, obviously, the task team will involve both departments, with the Department of Higher Education and Training taking a lead, as well as representatives from the other stakeholders, so that they are able to guide the sector as we move forward. The guidelines now to continue also includes that all individuals who have traveled internationally should self-isolate for a period of 14 days on their return. And in this instance, of course, will be guided by and working together with the Department of Health. Travel within South Africa should be limited to essential travel, and wherever possible, planned meetings, symposia, or conferences should be restricted and alternative formats explored. We have also agreed that activities that involve lots of people, like graduation ceremonies and such other things, must be postponed and or find more creative ways of actually dealing with matters that would have been dealt with in these large-scale gatherings. We have also emphasized that all institutions must jack up their communication including our departments who are also going to do the same, and ensure in particular that we act to combat fake news. And all the stakeholders agreed that we also plead with our media to please help us to free themselves from fake news. In fact, the threat of this virus and our ability to deal with it will also be dependent on our ability to communicate genuine and necessary news and combat fake news. The guidelines also is that we are going to be assisting all our institutions across the board to establish student health clinics or health centers in order to ensure readiness to deal with COVID-19 infections and or in the creation of awareness. Already the higher health sector that I've spoken about will be working closely with the National Institute of Communicable Diseases on the score. The majority of our institutions are not just learning spaces, teaching and learning spaces, but are also living spaces. Each institution, therefore, will develop a mitigation plan for its residents to ensure that protocols and controls are in place to mitigate the spread of the virus and to provide for isolation facilities where necessary. All students and staff are therefore urged to take the appropriate social distancing protocols very seriously. This includes limiting social interaction, keeping appropriate distance from other people, not shaking hands or hugging, regular hand washing, immediate consultation with health services in the events that people are uncertain about their own health situation. The last part that I would like to address, which was not necessarily a subject of discussion in our meeting today, but which talks about other measures that we have taken, especially as the Department of Higher Education and Training, which is the matter regarding South African students who are abroad at this point in time. We estimate that there are approximately 12,000 South African students who are studying abroad, some of whom may have returned home already following the outbreak of COVID-19. We know that quite some number returned from those who were in Wuhan, in China. We estimate also that we have approximately 1,500 students in China. We are working with the Department of International Relations and Cooperation on putting together a database of all students, South African students studying abroad, who are on our register and who have registered with the embassies in foreign countries. All South African missions abroad are being requested to provide information about South African students who find themselves in distress during this period and provide us with information. As of now, we have no international students who have been diagnosed with the virus that we are aware of. But nevertheless, we call on all our students who are studying outside the country to keep in touch with their nearest South African missions. And any decision on any further evacuation of South African nationals will, of course, be taken by Cabinet. All what we are doing is just to try and be of assistance to our students who are studying outside the country so that at least they are able to get immediate assistance where possible by working closely with our embassies. In conclusion, I would like to urge all South Africans to ensure that we work together to support the post-school education and training sector, including our Department of Science and Innovation and its agencies, to ensure that to support these institutions in the work that we are trying to do to ensure that we are able to effectively deal with the COVID-19 epidemic. Our role, by the way, as the ministry with these two departments, we are acutely aware that is not only just limited to our sector, but we have to make a contribution to South African society as a whole through our own scientific and research initiatives and interventions that we are going to be taking. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. We are now getting to the second part of our briefing, where we'll allow you as members of the media to ask clarity-seeking questions to the Minister. Please identify yourself, the media organization you represent,
Feel free,
and the question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You want to come in now? The Deputy Minister wants to come in now. There's something that is important. Perhaps before we take
Let's allow the GM to speak first, then we'll follow with questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ismail and to Minister. I think just 2 points. The first one is that we want to emphasize that they are private institutions. There are also public institutions like agricultural colleges, nursing colleges, police colleges, all of those being institutions of learning. And would really like to urge them to follow the guidelines and the agreements that we've reached with the different stakeholders today in terms of early recess. And secondly, we are also aware that the TVET college students were supposed to be sitting for their examinations from the 30th of March throughout into April. The task team that the Minister has mentioned, together with examinations and our TVET branch, will be looking at the examination dates that were set, reviewing those and making the necessary announcements in terms of when will the TVET colleges who were due to start their examination on the 30th of March, when will their examinations resume. So I think those students, the ones in the engineering studies, the NATED courses in the engineering studies were supposed to be resuming their examinations. So they must just watch the space in terms of when they should be ready for examination. In the meantime, we really want to encourage them to prepare for examinations as though they were starting on the 30th of March. So it was just those two additions.
Thank you very much, dear. Okay. Over to you, members of the media. I've noted your hand. No? Is there any other hand? No hand. Okay. You are next. The third person. We are just going to have this round of questions, ladies and gentlemen. Please do use the opportunity. I see you've got it. You are fine. You are good. Okay. In that order, please.
Minister, you touched a bit on arrangements for accommodations with regards to varsity students with the early recess. Do you mind elaborating a bit on what the agreement is on the arrangements and also the leave with regards to the workers, just so we can flesh it out a bit?
Okay.
From ENCA, I'm covered when you question, but just if you can share with us, Minister, I know maybe the universities have briefed you in terms of cases. I was still standing at 2, if I'm mistaken. There was one case at VETS and one at UCT, the staff member. Do you have any information or any update regarding the number of cases at institutions of higher learning right now as we speak? But also, did you have a buy-in from all the stakeholders? Is everyone happy? Is everyone on board? Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
All right. Okay. Thank you for the questions. The reason why, by the way, we're leaving this issue of accommodation to individual institutions, it's been part of the practice, for instance, that individual institutions have got their own arrangements, especially for institution-owned accommodation, because our students are not only in those, they are also in private accommodation. The arrangement, I suppose they also negotiate with private providers where necessary. It's because if you notice, the situation is not the same in different institutions. Some institutions have decided to suspend lectures, contact lectures, but without closing the residences. And they are using online mechanisms while students are in their residential spaces. Others have closed the institutions and asked students actually to leave the accommodation that they have. So the reason why we're talking about these institutional arrangements is because it's precisely to allow institutions to do things in a manner that suits them. You may find some institutions may say, since undergrad is not going to be teaching, so they may leave, but postgraduate students may remain. So we didn't want to come with a one-size-fits-all, because students. There is also, by the way, a debate. I might as well raise this. On that, it's not a debate. I'll mention the debate later. Our point of departure, firstly, on what is to be done must be guided by the phase at which the pandemic is, or the epidemic. The phase at which, for instance, the epidemic is at the moment is what is normally regarded as your initial phase. So we must at all times seek to be guided by those realities, working together with the Department of Health, as to what does that mean. Because, for instance, also to say you're closing university or college residences at a wrong time may be counterproductive, such that it may be a phase, for instance, where it may be easier to actually handle the epidemic among students if they are nearby, if they are in institutions, given the fact that a lot of our institutions have got health facilities that are also able to better respond to the virus. But the debate is about precisely how best at this phase do you deal with the location of students. Is it maybe better to try and keep them, those who are in residences, as much as possible, or to advise that they should actually go home? We don't know how the virus is going to develop. It may also lead to an instance where we may say, evacuate everyone. So that is why then we are guided by both the various institutional arrangements as well as the cause of the virus. I hope that answers your question. Spamandla, I don't know now, because I've been sitting here since this morning, just before 10. Well, I've been in meetings since 7:30. The one thing that the Minister of Health told me is that, which they are checking, is that the infection at Wits might as well have been a hoax. It's no longer certain. I don't know what's the situation now. He was checking that increasingly it's looking like there was no infection. Part of the problem that we have, which also I think, by the way, the media itself needs to watch carefully, is who announces about that there's been infections or not. As government now, Minister of Health informed us they've decided that the case of which may have been a private health institution which just announced that. Now we are saying as government, if we are to act together, no announcement must be made by anyone, including any private health institution, unless it has been checked with the Department of Health, especially with the National Institute of Communicable Diseases. As well as the situation at UCT is different, I am not aware of any further infections. There are rumors, but I don't want to talk about rumors because I don't want to be a generator of fake news by default. All I want to say is that we are consistently in touch. We are working together, actually. We are part of the command team that is led by the president, which is going to be meeting very regularly, 3 times a week or something. We are also in touch with the Department of Health. We also, as I have said, we're in the same team that is actually looking into this, so that at all times we are aware of what is happening.
Is everybody happy?
Thank you very much, Minister. Are there any further questions, ladies and gentlemen? Okay.
Oh, yes, sorry. Is everybody happy? Yes. Yes. How can I forget that? How can I forget that? Everyone has agreed. Literally all the stakeholders have agreed with what I have outlined here and the agreements that we have reached. Of course, as I have said, some things will have to be taken back to the institution. Everybody has expressed commitment to work together. And we also underline the fact that we know that there are tensions that are there in the sector, and there may as well have been some disputes. Let's put those aside and save the lives of South Africans and place that as number one. Yeah, leave for workers. Yeah, look, on leave for workers, we said that's normally the institutional arrangements, that when institutions go on recess, workers go on leave on the basis of their leave arrangements, which may or may not coincide, by the way, with the recess and so on. But the one thing that we emphasize is that we have to ensure the safety of both our students and staff as much as we can. It's very important. So that also, as the two departments, we are inevitably in the forefront in one way or the other, because of the work that we do in dealing with this. And we also have to ensure, in order to ensure the safety of everybody, we also have got to ensure the safety of all our staff and students in all of our institutions and entities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. This brings us to the end of our media briefing. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Those who need hard copies of the statement, you'll please go to the Toronto. Just give us 5 minutes, you'll receive the statement, and we'll also send them electronically as we normally do, and also on our social media platforms and our websites of both the Departments of Higher Education and Training and the Department of DSI's Science and Innovation. My apologies. Thank you.